Call the meeting to order. Stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no written communication, but we do have some board and committee reports. Before I let you go, Mrs. Ernst, Mrs. McLaughlin has a report of her own. So,
thank you very much. Yes, I serve on the Smallwood Drive reopening committee as the parent rep, and we did meet last week for a little over an hour and a half, just reviewing the procedures we have in place, making adjustments where we needed to. But now that everybody's in the building and moving around the building, they wanted to make sure that everything they had in place was working, and so far so good. And we will meet again as we need to throughout the school year.
great. Mrs. Ernst.
Social and Emotional Learning Committee met via Zoom. Basically, it was a let's make sure everything's working the way it should be working. Feedback was shared about how supports have been rolled out and received so far. The 3 tiers were discussed along with logistics of continued rollout, including faculty training and support, the SABRE screening, family support center, and finally relationship mapping.
Do we have any other committee reports?
And
Mr. Smith?
ECASP Budget Finance Committee was a kickoff for the year. Probably the two biggest pieces of news. In February, they hired an accountant, part-time to be bookkeeper. So what he's done in the 6 months is, the books were always okay, but some of the classifications of expenses from month to month got really consistent. So the books are now very consistent, and he's also moved QuickBooks from a desktop product to a cloud-based product, so that Dave Lowry can see books whenever he wants. He's not to get the PC. The chair of the committee, Jason McDermott, can jump into the books whenever he wants. So it's a little bit more, it's cleaner and there's more oversight, to summarize. And then the legislative committee met, and there are a number of areas, and you're back at Dave Little called me update. It's Thursday the 12th. I don't know the history of that event. I haven't been to it, but there's 14 slots left. So I don't know as a board if you want to commit to any, how we do that. Do we do it through this study? So the Dave Little event, there's slots left. So I guess people follow Mr. Simon and Chris Custody.
They can follow right up with that if they want.
Yes.
Directly if they want to participate in that.
Then the legislative breakfast, believe it or not, is still going to happen in person on the 14th from 8:30 to 11:30. For what it's worth, it's not going to be a buffet. I guess it's going to be good fare. So, no. As opposed to inviting all the reps, what the board to do is invite the reps of the winners of the open seats. So whoever wins the Schillinger seat between Conrad and Pecoraro, whoever wins the Sean Ryan seat between Jonathan Rivera and Joseph Totaro, whoever wins the Chris Jacobs seat between Sean Ryan and Joshua Mertzleft, and then the wrestler seat between Jennifer Berger and Matt Rath. So that's the idea, is to invite the new folks so they can get a feel for the agenda of the group. I understand as everyone else has been talked to in the past about what we're all about, what our agenda is. So that's on again for 14. We have 1 representative per district. So for the group, it's going to be our representative.
Did you say where they're having it?
It's in the room to the left when you walk into business.
Oh, okay.
That's the bigger of the 2 rooms. So the idea is the most space. And then there was the discussion, Mr. Governor was right on the heels of one of your updates about kids, I'll say just enrolled, in return, and the dialogue that floated around the room where kids were leaving, to be homeschooled, to be a private school, or parents are actually holding children back for a year. Just, this year's over, we'll just do second grade next year, September. It's benefit.
Anyone else?
We need to make a decision on who's going to attend the legislative breakfast.
I guess we can have a discussion on it. I mean, I don't know if it's one person per district, or is it?
Yeah.
So it's only one person?
It's one person per district, and then again, potentially those 4 newly elected
Are
folks.
you the legislative liaison this year? Okay, so I assume you kind of have the top choice.
I'm-
Right for you.
Or is it somebody from the, administration that goes? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't profile who
If
should
it's
be there.
one person, is it better served?
Well, one of them is ours, right? The ranching office.
The rent's office, it's, again, it's Berger or Rath.
Yeah, so it probably would be good for us to have somebody there.
Yeah, maybe we can squeeze in that in board member.
Yeah,
Let's find out, like, if it's truly just one person, and then, one only. Deb, are you able to?
I will.
Thank you.
And then the other open issue would be, wants to go see David Fennell on the 12th at 6:30.
and that's also at BOCES?
Again, that's,
What's the dessert bar?
What's the limit on that one?
I don't know what the total limit is, but as to the meeting down,
Deb, maybe you could find out
there
that
were
for
14
us to
slots left.
disseminate it, what the limit is.
Okay.
For the
David Little thing.
says-
If you haven't seen them, I'd recommend that you go.
Well, you saw him last year, right?
I saw them a couple of years
A
ago.
couple of years ago. I remember when you,
Extremely eye-opening.
They were talking about Zooming all of these meetings. One of the more senior board members said, there's no way you're going to Zoom David Little, because I guess he's very active. Does that your memory of him? Does he work in the room?
okay. This starts, I'll let you go with your,
Yeah, hopefully everybody had a chance to review the voting delegates guide, the proposed bylaws, amendments, and resolutions. Essentially, the part that is important, pages 8 through 22 are the resolutions they're recommending. Pages 23 through 29 are those that they are not recommending, and usually it's for reasons, I mean, we're not putting something into law here, we're basically giving them kind of their walking papers for when they go and meet with politicians, and so, there are certain things that they feel like they're just gonna hit a wall with anyway, so it's not worth putting it in our short list of things that we want to push. I'd be interested to hear if anyone had any, in addition to those, there were 3 late resolutions also. If anybody had any opposition to the recommendations, and if so, what your reasoning is. There you have it.
so is it, everybody is good for, because Mark will vote on these, everybody's good with voting with the recommendations from Nisbet? Perfect. There you go, Mark, you have your,
Papers.
Thank you.
Last year, there were a couple that changed, like after discussion and stuff like that, so I reported back afterward.
I think it's signed up my calendar, so. Got my necktie and make sure.
all right, then we will move right into the superintendent's report.
Thank you. We have an update, as you know, a lot of what we're doing with our reopening plan is technology dependent. So we've been troubleshooting on a regular basis and dealing with, tickets that are coming in for support. We've identified some areas that we would like to improve. And I've asked Dr. Shanahan, who's been working with our IT department, as well as Mrs. Brzezinski, who has the purse strings, to provide us with an update in how we plan to address our technology needs in the near future and beyond. Welcome.
All right, so we're glad to have the opportunity to give you an update. We have about 7 weeks to really reflect on what we've been putting into place, just like some of the committee reports alluded to. We've been looking at the tickets that have been coming in. We've been meeting with principals and meeting with teachers. We've been listening to some parents have sent some email correspondences on what is working and what's not working. So this is going to be more on the hardware end for tonight, what we're going to share, and we'll provide other updates as we go through. So just to give you a little bit of history, before we had the pandemic, our technology use was intermittent during the school day, and it was a lot of post something, kids do it on their own, and you know, there wasn't a lot of video platforming going on. We didn't have that high level of interaction that takes more processing power. So pre-pandemic, we were posting work, kids were working on it, we might have been circulating around the room and assisting students with their assignments. Teachers might have been outside of the school day creating content for teaching and learning and then posting it into those spaces or using it for live lessons. Teachers were also using it to communicate, so I'm focusing just on teachers for this slide. During the pandemic, and we're thinking this will go beyond that point because we don't know if things will ever go back to being the same, but we might harness the use of technology in different ways could be the silver lining in this whole thing. So we might be using our technology differently, but going back to some more face-to-face instruction, obviously we want. But during the pandemic right now, as you all know, and you're experiencing it with your own children, is we're doing a lot of synchronous video communication, which takes a lot of processing power on the device, and I'll tie that together in a moment. We're also still doing some of those other practices, like posting that asynchronous work for students to do, creating content and communicating through email. But the video conferencing and that synchronous work is a very large shift for us and all school districts right now. So if I switch to the student side, the same thing. They were doing that intermittent work. They were communicating through email, and it was a lot of asynchronous again. But now they're being required to learn synchronously, and they're asked to complete asynchronous work in their Google Classroom, sometimes when they're on video and sometimes not. And they're also increasing the use of electronic or different educational software tools, right, that they may not have been using before that we're using to facilitate learning. So the educational software use has gone way up as well, and then communication is still there through email. So why the summary and what does that lead us to? So lessons learned. Our teachers' Chromebooks is what they had because we create an ecosystem, right? So we have apps in that ecosystem, we have networking, and we have devices. And they all have to work together. So we can't talk about them separate. They need to come together. So what we've been doing is talking about the fact that they're not working the way we want them to work together. So Chromebooks rely a lot on cloud-based work, and they don't have the infrastructure to handle the amount of work that we're doing. With the video conferencing, the synchronous work. So we're good. We problem solved around this. Every time the problems come up, we move forward, we problem solve, we get together with our tech team, we get together with our teachers when we try to figure out how to move forward. So we have moved forward in this by using their desktops. We have a solution which harnesses the power that the Chromebook does not, and then they're doing some dual monitors where they can use their Chromebook as a second monitor attached to the desktop, and they can pull their kids over and see the students' faces in the Zoom room so they can attend to their needs as they're in the class, but they can have their content on the other screen. But it's processed through the desktop. So one of the things that we would like to do is remedy that or think about in this ecosystem now that requires this video conferencing, maybe a Chromebook is not the best suggestion and the best tool for us to be using because how we're using the tool has changed. So On the student side, most of our Chromebooks are 11-inch screens. We have a little bit larger in the high school now. We have the new touch screens there this year. But remember, 11 inches is great when you're jumping on for a quick Google form or a quick Google Classroom and you're popping back out. But now we're going to synchronous learning. Like middle 6 through 12, or those remote Wednesdays for our kids in the elementary, or our all virtual kids, have really small screens. A remedy is an HDMI cord from the little screen to your big monitor in your house. It's easily solved, but that's not a long-term solution. So if we are going to have kids work in synchronous capacity for any length of time, we need larger screens. So that's some evaluation where we're at right now. We would like to keep the ecosystem so that when students move from grade level to grade level, that they have some similar features to those devices. So we have the high school went full touchscreens this year with their new laptops, and then we were going to be replacing with all the touchscreens. Couple reasons. One, for our littlest kids who don't work keyboards yet, that are 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. Our kindergartners now have tablets that are touchscreens, so that's okay, and our high school kids have touchscreens. As we evolve our ecosystem under these new times and long-term planning over the next 3 to 4 years, our goal is to have everybody in a touchscreen. Math teachers say how much easier it would be for them if they were touchscreens when they're dealing with writing mathematic notations and scientific notations as well. So those are some reasons that we're encouraging to move to a touchscreen ecosystem K through 12. So the solutions that we're proposing across a 3 to 4 year time period is teachers are going to shift to Windows devices. So we had, I'm an Apple lover, sorry, but I lost the battle because it's not our predominant ecosystem, and so we want to make sure that there's consistency within that for device replacement, for having kids move through a system. So Windows, instead of a Chromebook for teachers, is what we're proposing so that teachers can run some of these more high-powered applications simultaneously. So if you have had your children talk to you about using GoGuardian, which is a way teachers can come in and see what the students are doing on the screen to help them, if they run that with Zoom on a Chromebook, it causes problems. So that's why they're running on their desktops. With a Windows machine, we can run those two software applications simultaneously without that issue, and it would make the work more powerful for the teacher, and that they'd be able to support students more efficiently. We're also looking at having docking stations in the classroom, so when you come in with your laptop, you click it in, and you're ready to go. So the teachers would have docking stations. The student purchases moving forward, we would want to get near approximately a 13-inch touchscreen moving forward to better serve them so that they can see those screens a little bit better. So these are some of our evaluations to this point. These are some of the issues that we want to handle systemically long term. So in order to do that, not only did I have to work very closely with Brandon Watson, I also had to work very closely with Laura Bazinski, because I can share with her what I want. She can tell me whether I can have what I want.
So each year the district budgets funds in our technology budget and our BOCES budget to continue the replacement of the devices that we already have and to grow our technology program as the needs for our students and our educational programs change. So typically the board might remember that usually in April, May, we start looking at a larger BOCES project. We have the money available in our budget, but we kind of hang on to it until later in the year to make sure we're having a good year. So that money is there. This year, we want to move up the spending of that money. It's already in our budget, but because the needs of our teachers in particular and our students have changed so drastically this year, we wanted to come up with a way to be able to purchase the devices now and not wait and lose a whole academic year with curriculum office and the technology office struggling to help our teachers and our kids get the most out of their virtual education, their remote education, or their in-person education, because they are using these devices in the classroom as well. So in order to do that, we needed a lot more money than what we have available to us in 1 year's budget. So one tool available to us through BOCES is an IPA, or an installment purchase agreement. It's almost like leasing a car. So you have the full amount of the purchase up front, but the payments are divided into 3 years. So we have the buying power this year of about $750,000, which is close to a $250,000 payment if you were to divide it equally over the 3 years. So we have the funds available in our budget this year, and that amount of an IPA would allow us to purchase the laptops that Dr. Shanahan mentioned and the docking stations for all of our teachers across the entire district, and would allow us to purchase the larger 13-inch touch Chromebooks for all of our students in grades 1 through 4. When we do that, we will be able to pull back the devices that the teachers have now, the Chromebooks that the teachers have, and we'll be able to redeploy those because we purchased them last year. We'll redeploy those to some of our students because it is very suitable for them and the work that they're doing, and replace some of our older devices. So typically we try to get 4 to 5 years out of the Chromebook. And what Mr. Watson shared with us, which was a great illustration, is we all have about a $1,000 iPhone in our hand. And it's a mini computer. And how often do we replace it? Most of us more than every 4 to 5 years. And that's $1,000. And our Chromebooks that we're purchasing for our students are $350 to $400. So if you think about trying to get that same longevity out of a device, that's about a third of the cost. It's just not really working. So our hope is to move forward with an IPA this year, but we can't only make one large purchase in 1 year and think that's going to solve our problem, because we have more than grades 1 through 4 on devices. We have new kindergarten tablets that need to be replaced, and grades 5 through 12. And every year their devices get a little bit older. So what we will be able to do is do a new IPA every year for 3 years. We will be able to offset those costs either by shifting budgeted funds from other areas or with increased aid that we'll receive from the large purchase that we'll have this year. So next year's BOCES aid will go up, and that will help offset next year's IPA. So by the end of the 3rd year will be our 3rd new IPA. We'll have 3 payments. They'll all be within our budget. Then in year 4, the first one will be paid off, which will give us another $750,000 worth of buying power in that year. So when we worked with Mr. Watson, we asked him to take all of our devices and kind of map them out into when they would need to be replaced and how long we could use them so that we could come up with dollar amounts that would be a sustainable replacement plan, so that we're turning the devices over as needed and not trying to get longevity out of them that they're simply not built for. So 2021 would be, this year is about $750,000. Next year would be about $590,000 of a purchase. And then the following year would be about $600,000. And then we'll be able to roll those over each year, keep our replacement cycle going, and not negatively affect our budget, because we'll either shift monies from perhaps the technology budget or other areas, or we'll be offsetting some of those payments with our increases in BOCES aid.
Do we own the devices or are we leasing the devices?
The devices are leased, so they go back to BOCES when we're done with them.
They currently do anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what allows us to make the purchases through BOCES, because they own them, and technically they could then share them with other districts when we were done with them. I don't know that they do that, but once they take them back from us, that's not our concern, because now we have newer devices in our students' hands and in our teachers' hands. And the purchases are aidable at our BOCES rate, which is 65 cents on the dollar return the following year.
So I have a couple of questions. So the Chromebooks that were given to the board, or the board was able to use while we were doing our virtual sessions, those seem to be big screens.
The teachers are larger screens than the students.
What's the age of those machines? Does anybody know? Like, I'm assuming those weren't newer machines or
No,
newer devices.
I would need to ask Brandon, I'm not sure which.
So which part of the technology or whatever I mean, how did the decision go from those bigger screens to smaller screens go? I mean, like, when did that happen?
Teachers always have bigger screens, so you have the teacher devices. The students have the smaller screens, because a teacher might be on there doing, hours of work creating things, whereas a student might just jump on for a little activity for class and jump off in previous uses, or they might get into Google Classroom and fill out a Google form, or write a paper in a Google Doc, and then, so the use was different. So teachers always have bigger screens than students. So you have that teacher-sized screen that we want the students to have now.
And originally, we weren't one-to-one.
Yes.
So they were housed in the classrooms, and the kids were only using them when the teacher was using them in
Well,
the class.
I get it, it just seems like this is going to be a really expensive lesson learned. So that our 11-inch devices just don't work anymore.
The devices are still being used. The 11-inch devices that we're replacing, especially in grades 1 through 4, are 5 years old. So they were on their way out anyways. The smaller devices were less expensive, and we were able to purchase more of them, obviously at the same dollar amount. And prior to this long-range plan, Mr. Watson was replacing these kind of in piecemeal, because he would have his budget, which is smaller than our BOCES budget, and then at the end of the year, he would get a yay or nay on whether or not he could purchase another batch of devices. So he was always trying to get the most devices that he could to keep the student devices up to date.
But should we be doing some sort of pilot so that we understands the right word, but so that we know that the 13-inch is the optimal device, so that we don't learn another lesson in a couple of years that maybe that wasn't the optimal device or size or.
Well, okay, so first of all, the replacement is on Chromebooks that we have to replace at the end of this year anyways, because they're not going to be, they're struggling right now, just because of the replacement plan didn't have a cyclical cycle to it to begin with, which is why we would replace 1 through 4. It's not only because they're 11-inch, it's because it's 11-inch and they were due to be replaced simultaneously. We could pilot, I'm not really sure what that would gain for a student device, because the students don't run those multiple educational software simultaneously. They do a lot of the web-based work. So I guess,
Well, we're trying to fine tune what it is that's
right.
best suited for student needs.
Yes.
So worst case scenario, when we were kind of brainstorming this and trying to figure out a long range plan, our teacher devices were what we knew needed to be changed immediately, because their Chromebooks didn't have the power to run the software programs, Google Classroom, Zoom, GoGuardian, Seesaw. The teachers are running multiple programs to be able to monitor both their students and monitor the applications that are running in the background. So we knew that was up top. But then because the 1 through 4 devices were already 5 years old, we knew that they needed to be replaced as well. The complaints that had come in that the devices were kind of small, which is why we upped it to a 13-inch screen. It's still affordable, it still fits within our plan, but it gives the students a larger screen to be able to look at. No, it's not a 17-inch, but they do need to put it in their backpacks and carry it home. Some of even our littlest kids are taking these devices home with them. So we need to make sure it's transportable, that they can handle it without dropping it, it's not too heavy, but that it's not the 11-inch screen. It's bigger, but it's not so big that they can't manage it.
And we wouldn't get into a situation where we would get them and then say, oh geez, this screen is not the right size. This allows us to have a planned replacement cycle for all of our technology. And what it does is it accelerates the need really on the teacher end to go from Chromebooks to laptops for the processing needs. But as Laura had said in the past, our technology budget was not funded to the point where it needed to be. So this plan allows us to stay budget neutral by reallocating the funds and accelerate our ability to plan in the long term.
Just so, like, we can look at the ABC payment. So it's really only in the first year that we're paying $250, the second year, we're paying $440, right? And then the
Correct.
third, $640.
Correct.
And then that'll just kind of be ongoing and we'll keep rolling.
Well, do we get aid on that 250 then?
Yes.
So we're not really paying, we get money back, the 65%, so it's not truly 250, it's,
Correct. And so the aid that comes in next year will help offset the second payment. And then the next year, we'll get aid on the first two payments, which will help offset the third payment. And then it will just be steady from then on. We'll be able to do a new IPA every year, similar to those dollar amounts, without seeing any spikes or valleys in our budget.
Will we have any issues with the Windows devices running any of the current apps that we have, or?
So the Chromebooks are running on the student side as they need to. The issue with the student Chromebooks, that they were a little bit small and they were old. The teacher devices aren't going to be Chromebooks, they're going to be laptops. So Mr. Watson has run calculations with the RAM and speed that the devices need to run the software programs that we have purchased and the teachers are utilizing with their students.
So is it the Chromebook app, it's 11-inch and goes to 13, and then the next one up is a 17?
You know, the next one, it may go to a 15.
Maybe.
We also looked, this is going to seem odd, but we looked at locker sizes.
Yeah.
Because they have to go into a locker
They
too.
have to go in the
So
back,
how,
so
they
they're
have to
already
be carried,
heavy.
they have to go in a locker. So there were a couple different measurements we looked at, and the 13 is that next size up. I would need to look again with him. We just knew the next size.
It's just because their backpacks are full.
Right.
We have our kids hooked up to monitors at home, it does work well, but, you know, we had some spare monitors in the house, as you can imagine. For technology heavy in our house, so.
Well, and we did talk about other devices, student devices, but it gets cost prohibitive. I mean, when you start going into a full Windows machine for every student in the district or a full, so when you're talking pilot, like those, it's just not even, we could pilot it and I could dream, but it's not going to happen because we'll never have the budget to afford those particular machines.
Well, and as the discussion unfolded, our number one priority was getting our teachers the tools that they need to accomplish what we're asking them to do.
Right.
And then when we looked at our budgeted amount, the 250, you know, we realized that our buying power through an IPA is greater. So that's when we went to Brandon and said, what is next on the replacement cycle? And he said grades 1 to 4 Chromebooks, and we said great. So we could accelerate that by going this route as opposed to just spending the $250 and buying $250,000 worth of devices. We can get $750,000 worth of devices and outfit our teachers and 4 of our grade levels, 3 of our grade levels with new devices as opposed to having it take 2 or 3 years to do that.
On top of that, there's a supply chain issue. So if we wait to the end of the year and decide we're going to buy grades 1 through 4, we're not getting them next year. It's that backed up. So part of the reason for the discussion now versus the end of the year is we're recognizing, Brandon was really good with Laura and Tony and I in the last year. He said, for this year's devices, we have got to put this order in now. And we did, and our stuff came in August, and we were okay, and we have people around us in other districts that are waiting for devices still. So we need to, once again, be mindful that this is going to be a problem with the supply chain, as long as what's going on with stuff coming from other countries, that we're not going to be able to make decisions at the last minute. We will, but we're going to sit and wait a year for stuff to come in. So his other concern with the 1 through 4 is if we hold off, we may not get them in time, and then we're going to have broken devices, and he's concerned about being able to handle a ticket, which means I need to trade this out, send this to be fixed. Like, do we have enough? So the timeliness of this was also why it came into play. He was concerned about that.
Well, the pandemic has accelerated technology integration in our classrooms, and we want to make sure it stays, because that is one of the positive things that I think will hopefully stand the test of time after the pandemic is over. But we want to give people the tools to do that, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to use technology with students but not having the right tools.
Mrs. Kaczynski, is there a fee or interest charged on these IPAs?
Not interest, but there are project fees that BOCES charges, but that's wrapped into those dollar amounts. And that's on everything. They have their, their own staff that are putting these projects together, getting quotes and bids and all of that. But that's typical and standard for any project that we do with BOCES.
Meg Miller, Shannon's supply chain concern at the legislative committee. We were around, we were talking about technology, and there were many districts that still didn't have their September orders. You'll be running whatever kid had from last year.
Is there a certain like percentage or something that they charge on the?
I would need to look. I think it varies based on what you're purchasing and what staff they have involved, but I would need to, we have it in the paperwork,
not-
I just don't know it off the top
It's
of my
not
head.
prohibitive in any way in terms of, it doesn't make us stop and say this isn't smart.
No,
because
it's
of
like
these.
8 to 10% of the purchase price. So when we wrap it in, those dollar amounts include all the fees that we get.
But that's anything we purchase through BOCES. They have admin fees and,
You just buy software and
right, so you could go buy a software from the company directly, and it would be cheaper than buying it from BOCES, but you don't get the aid back the following year, so.
And that's on even like services. Like we have arts and ed through BOCES, and we pay an author, not this year, but we pay an author to come in and visit, and it's a 10% fee on top of the author fee. But then we get 65% back the next year.
So if there's any additional questions, I think now would be the time to ask them, because if not, my goal would be to have you approve by resolution the first letter A, IPA, at the November 3rd board meeting, so we could get that project in and have it move forward.
So IPAs are a little different than a single year purchase because we are extending our payments out over 3 years. So it needs to be approved by our board, and then the district clerk will send the minutes to BOCES, and their board will review that you approve the purchase. Their board will approve it, and then BOCES will issue the purchase order for the devices that we're ordering. So their meeting is on November 18th. So we have to have our paperwork to them by November 6th. So we'll put it on the November 3rd agenda for your consideration. Then we'll be able to send it to them on the 4th, assuming it goes through.
This is sort of a related question. Are the power outages at the high school related to the increased use of technology?
No.
So does anyone have any more questions for Laura and Dr. Shannon? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, turning to a lighter topic, this week is NISBA's Board Recognition Week across the state, New York State School Boards. It's a week I look forward to every year because we have the opportunity to feature all of you and your wonderful work on behalf of our district. So I'm looking at my notes here. On Sunday, we began spreading the good news about all of you. Tomorrow, there should be an editorial in the Amherst Bee on your behalf, thanking you for all your hard work. We've been highlighting each board member each day on the district's social media account. So I think we've had our president and vice president featured, and every day will be somebody else. We have a news feature on our website. Our building signs have special messages honoring all of you. And you have in front of you a token of appreciation from me that is reflective of the times. So enjoy.
We love it.
I'll sanitize.
So
Betsy.
that's your survival kit.
Oh my God.
Oh, well.
Oh my gosh, that's sweet. There's
I
toilet.
have.
It's all the COVID thing. All the COVID thing.
What's that?
Oh, there's a festive mask.
Oh, is yours mom?
Mine has sparkles.
Mine has something else.
Thank you.
That's really fun. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
But thank you for all you do. I know we're looking at doubling your salary for all your hard work. But I do appreciate everything you all bring to the
I'd like to
table.
give my salary back to the district.
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Crump.
That's so magnanimous of you.
we'll use it towards the FDA. No, but thank you for everything you do and all your support and all your leadership, especially now more than ever. I'm thankful that our district has been able to navigate these uncharted waters very positively and collaboratively because of all of your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of the superintendent's report.
All right. We will need a motion for new business items.
I'll make a motion for new business items E1, A through G, 2, A through D, 3, B through F, and H.
We have a second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving new business items E1, A through G, 2A through D, 3B through F, and H, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Custodi, I know we have a list of follow-up action items.
Is only one person allowed from each district to attend the legislative breakfast? How many may attend from each district for the David Little presentation? I didn't know if you wanted a follow-up on, Mrs. Kaczynski's on. No? Okay. Okay. Did I miss
Great.
anything?
No,
I
that's
think
what I
just
had.
how to register for those two things too.
Oh, it comes through me.
Yeah, well, just put that too.
Okay.
Great, and we'll need a motion to convene to executive session.
I'll make a motion to convene to executive session for matters regarding the employment of a particular person.
We have a second? All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.